Johannesburg Water says its systems are pumping water at full capacity and it hopes that their network will improve drastically overnight when demand lessens. A power outage at the Eikenhof station has left parts of Johannesburg such as Soweto, Randburg and other suburbs in high-lying areas without water for 4 days now, up to 5 days. Joburg Water says they continue to prioritise hospitals and clinics. Now let's further get an understanding of what's happening. We invite Professor Anthony Turton to this conversation. He's a water expert in the Centre for Environment Management at the University of the Free State. Prof, thank you so much for your time again. We are here, Prof, as this situation continues to become problematic and escalates. I mean, larger parts of Joburg are now without water for some close to 5 days now. I mean, how close would you say we are from a total system collapse?
Yes, good afternoon to you and the listeners. It's interesting to talk about Johannesburg just after you've done that clip on Cape Town. I was down in Cape Town just a week or so ago, and I was briefed in on the planning at City of Cape Town, and it's very, very sophisticated planning they've got there. So here you can contrast two cities, one that's very forward-looking, looking at establishing water security in order to attract capital back into the local economy, and then you get the other one that's in denial. That's saying things like, for example, they're going to prioritise hospitals. I mean, how can you prioritise a hospital when that hospital is part of the same system as everybody else? So, in other words, it's we can see that in Cape Town they're speaking more honestly to people. They're telling people what's really going on, and they've really got some very, very good long-term visionary plans. In Johannesburg, it's just denial and it's just basically spin. So, I'm afraid that Johannesburg is nowhere near turning the corner at the moment, and part of it is because there's just simply no integrity in the messaging coming out of the people in charge of the systems.
And I mean, when you look at the two cities, as you rightfully say, Prof, in comparing Johannesburg and Cape Town, what's worrying, of course, is that Johannesburg is an economic hub. I mean, I'm going to go back to my question. I mean, is this going to lead to that total collapse? What should Rand Water and, in fact, Johannesburg Water be doing in the interim to mitigate against a total failure and a shutdown?
Well, let's look at facts. I'm a person that works with facts, and I work at strategic level. So the first fact is that the city of eThekwini is a metro. It has failed. It is at this moment in time unable to cope with the demands made of it by citizens. So the local economy in eThekwini is failing. But eThekwini is a metro. And now if we go to Gauteng, there are 3 metros in Gauteng. There's Johannesburg, there's Tshwane, and there's Ekurhuleni. And those 3 are supplied by Rand Water. And Rand Water has just recently put out a press release stating that it carries 2 billion rand of debt on its balance sheet. Now, how can any entity, any bulk water provider sustain itself when municipalities are not paying for the water that they're receiving? So, in other words, it is not an impossibility that we're going to start seeing Rand Water certainly coming under extreme pressure in the future, and possibly potentially failing if any of the metros also fail. So in other words, it's not I would say it's a 60% possibility that something like this can happen. Now, that's not a very high possibility, and it's something that we can avert, and it's something that we should avert. But for example, if one of the metros in Gauteng goes for whatever reason, is unable to meet their water demand for the future, then what happens now is it triggers a knock-on effect into the economy. Remember that Gauteng is an economic hub. 1/3 of all South Africans, 20 million South Africans approximately, are employed there. So it's 1/3 of the citizens, and it's 2/3 of the national economy is sustained in those 3 metros, and plus a few little towns like Krugersdorp and Springs and what have you. So in other words, this is a very, very serious matter. and it's something that we can resolve soon, but we are getting very, very close to the edge, I think. And it's not impossible that we're going to start seeing economic hardship coming out of those three metros as businesses start to fail, because no business can sustain itself. If you're a factory manufacturing something, you can't have an interruption to your water supply to keep your boiler going, or to keep some key part of your manufacturing process going. So the media tends to focus mostly on water as a human drinking water issue. I would like us to focus more on water as an economic enabler, water as something that keeps our economy going, water that's something that creates investor confidence, that enables us to grow jobs, to employ people. That's all the messaging that I think is missing in all of these narratives about water.
And I mean, Prof, I think those stats do help to illuminate just the extent of this particular problem. I want to go back to what you said about the 2 million rand debt that is owed, to Rand Water. And when you consider the Blue Drop report, which actually says that 1.5 billion rand is needed to fix the country's entire water infrastructure problem, it makes that situation for Rand Water that much more dire. But perhaps just talk to us about what then should the priorities be for South Africa, particularly given what you're saying in terms of the need for us to see water as an economic enabler.
Yes, just a correction there. It's not 1.5 billion rand for the country. It's over R1 trillion. Trillion with the T, not billion with the B. So it's a big number, very, very big number. And the difference here is that what Cape Town is doing, it's planning for water security by diversifying its supply. So it's going, for example, for desalinated seawater, which is an endless supply of water. Once you desalinate above 50 megaliters a day, it becomes economically cheaper than surface water, than river water. So once you break through that barrier, you suddenly go into a completely new zone where you become water secure and capital starts flowing back into your local economy. Gauteng, unfortunately, cannot do that because they don't have an ocean close by. So Gauteng is going to have to start looking at other sources of water, and unfortunately, its options are relatively limited. But one of the most pressing priorities in the Gauteng areas, they have to get control of their sewage. Gauteng produces about plus minus 3.5 to 4 billion liters of sewage every single day. Every single day. Now, Cape Town is starting to recover that water from that waste. Windhoek has been doing it since the 1970s using South African technology provided by the CSIR. So we know how to do it. So this is where we're going to have to start investing in the future. And unfortunately, I don't see any long-term strategic plans coming out of any of those three metros in Gauteng that start addressing this kind of diversification. So once again, let's get back to comparing and contrasting Cape Town, City of Cape Town versus the three metros of Gauteng versus the metro in eThekwini. So those 5 metros, they actually can teach us a lot about what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing, and more importantly, the pitfall of what's going to happen if we don't do what we need to do.